Hello everyone. Since my first video detailing referee corruption in the FIE and my request for your stories and information on inappropriate behavior to be sent to my email address poncedeleonfencing@gmail.com, many of you have sent emails describing a variety of situations in great detail. Many of them focused on the players already outlined in my first video, some of them talked about new facets of what I already discussed previously, and still more were about entirely new situations. Since I have not been able to substantiate many of these claims, I am not going to discuss the details here, but nonetheless I am looking into as many of them as I can. What I have learned from these emails is that if even 1/3 of them are true, the price for fixing a fight is much lower than I had previously expected, with one person detailing that they saw a single €50 note changing hands between a coach and a referee. Like nearly every single person who emailed me though, this person did not want to be identified since they feel that by attaching their name it would open them up to retaliation. I have also learned that much more commonly this type of deal-making takes the form of a favor for a favor, with emails detailing a large variety of favors and asks big and small. But since I don't have proof for the allegations made in most of these emails and nobody to stand behind them, let us move on to things that were brought to my attention that were definitely, provably illegal. In the last video I showed that Milanchev refereed the final fight at the Satellite World Cup in Kuwait, which he was definitely not supposed to referee because there was a Bulgarian in the Final Four. Someone also brought to my attention that in 2019 Emanuel Buka refereed a final between Kian and Velikaya, despite the fact that Vecchi lost to Kian in the semi-final. This is not allowed according to Rule T.50.5, which specifies that no referee may be assigned to any semi-final or final fight when there is a fencer of their country in the Final Four. I also detailed in my previous video how Fikrat Valiyev failed to declare a conflict of interest refereeing for the Uzbek team, which is coached by one of his current co-workers. Another email I received detailed a similar situation where Valiyev actually refereed one of his own students in the 2020 Zonal Championships in San Salvador, El Salvador. USA Fencing creates a bio from each athlete when they are selected for World Championships and uploads it to their website. Here is Honor Johnson's athlete bio from that same season, where she lists Fikrat Valiyev as her coach. Valiyev has shown many times that he doesn't give a toss about rules or regulations. He frequently referees matches that he shouldn't and constantly makes bizarre calls in these matches. Recently, Valiyev flew with Tatiana Nazlymov to coach her in an Olympic qualification event in Lima. He coached her for the first 2 days, and when she was eliminated from the tournament, he was then asked by the tournament organizers to referee the team event. According to FIE Technical Rule 46.2, referees may not combine their function with any other activity during the tournament, such as member of the Directoire Technique, team captain, official delegate of their national federation, trainer, etc. And FIE Organizational Rule 8 defines a tournament as the name given to a number of competitions, individual and team, held at the same place, at the same period, and under the same aegis. I was alerted to Valiyev's illegal refereeing activity when I saw Slicer Saber's story post about this topic on Instagram, which I am displaying on screen right now. He had to borrow a suit because he did not bring his own. He then proceeded to referee 3 matches before returning the suit and flying home. I would now like to focus on 2 of these 3 matches. The first one was Mexico against Korea, where the Mexican team pulled off a thrilling upset. This was especially interesting because shortly after my first video was published, there was an incident at an American Olympic qualification tournament that was highlighted by CyrusofChaos. I will show a portion of the video here, but to sum up this incident, a Mexican referee, Jacobo Morales, instructed another Mexican referee, Brandon Romo, to make several calls in favor of Tatiana Nazlymov in a match important for Olympic qualification. This is several excerpts of the last few hits of the video from the reverse angle of the Nazlymov-Erikson fight. Worse than the fact that the calls here are all incorrect in favor of Nazlymov is the fact that a referee, Jacobo Morales, who has no official role in this fight, is making decisions that affect the outcome. This is especially inappropriate because this match is crucial for Olympic qualification for Tatiana. This is all while Valiyev, Nazlymov's coach, hangs over the barrier within whispering distance of Morales. The Nazlymovs have been posting a lot of videos recently of Tatiana's fights in an attempt to prove no wrongdoing and clear their name. From this angle we can see Andrei, Tatiana's younger brother, filming this fight. If the Nazlymovs really want to clear their name, I would strongly encourage them to post this video so everyone can see exactly what happened from this very important viewpoint. These calls were incorrect and resulted in Nazlymov winning a match she should have lost, which caused her to gather enough points to firmly put her on the Olympic team. Then shortly after, we have a situation where the coach of that fencer is refereeing a match for the Mexican team, which is also important for Olympic qualification. Mexico is currently in 17th place in the Olympic qualification list, and if they are able to get into the top 16, the whole team will qualify. To recap, Tatiana Nazlymov wins a fight because of inappropriate behavior from a Mexican referee. Then shortly after, Nazlymov's coach referees a huge upset for the Mexican team in an event he isn't even supposed to be refereeing. This is quite a coincidence. The second match from the same bracket was a match between the Bulgarian team and the Japanese team, where the Bulgarian team also pulled off a thrilling upset. As I mentioned in the last video, the Bulgarian team is helped quite a bit because of the shadow of a powerful referee from Bulgaria, Vasil Milinchev. Because of the very convoluted qualification process for the Olympic Games, in order for any Bulgarians to qualify in women's sabre this year, they must do it through team qualification. Because of these two upsets, Bulgaria now sits at the 8th spot in the Olympic qualification list. They still have a lot of work to do to catch up to Ukraine and Italy in 5th and 6th respectively. We will see how they do at the two remaining tournaments. Since I began making this video after the World Cup in Lima, there has been another Team World Cup in Athens. In that tournament, Team USA fell out of the top 4, which means that they will qualify from the American zone, not from being in the top 4 in world rankings. Qualification for Mexico is now impossible since there is only one team event remaining in Belgium later this week, and there are not enough points up for grabs here for Team USA to be able to pass Ukraine, who is ahead of them in 4th place. Likewise, Bulgaria can no longer pass Italy, which they would need to do to qualify from the European zone. If these were attempts to help these two teams qualify for the Olympics, those attempts were unsuccessful. Nevertheless, subversion shouldn't be ignored just because it is unsuccessful. The last team event to determine Olympic qualification happens later this week in Belgium, so we will see what happens there. I am now quoting directly from an email sent to me by someone who wished to remain anonymous. However, he agreed that the information could be shared if his identifying information was kept private. While you listen, I will display the actual changelog he sent me. When referees are to be assigned, the procedure is usually done at random by the computer, but the delegate, Marius Florea, is in the refereeing commission these days, and often does this task, will then ask to check the tableau and make changes to the assignments made by the computer, without explaining them. However, when making these changes, the software asks you for the reason of the change, as is required by FIE homologated software, and stores it in the file submitted to the FIE. This means that FIE has a record of every change made, but they never follow up on it. This is usually quite a lot, about 5 in each round. Some of them are obvious, moving less strong referees to video duties for the good of the fencers, but some are quite inexplicable. Since this change log is incredibly hard to read, what you're seeing now is a reformatted version that is easier on the eyes, at least for pools. There is no indication of which direct elimination fights correspond to which number in this list, though you can try to piece these together yourself by digging through the live results and matching the names to their rows. If you want to do this, you can find a link in the description, as well as links to the original and reformatted change logs. In any case, if anyone has a record of the change log from the Lima tournament recently, especially from the team event, or the original hiring list for referees, I would very much like to take a look at them. If anyone watching has access to either of these, please email them to me. This next bit is unrelated to Olympic qualification, but I also discussed previously how many of the Uzbek fencers receive the benefit of dubious calls in their matches. In a post on Reddit, uPornPusher1536 created a chart where he counted up how many times each referee at Junior Asian Games refereed fights from each country. Take a look at it and see if you notice anything odd. At a quick glance, there appear to be two outliers here, both being very high numbers in the Uzbekistan column in the Valiyev and Yakukin rows. In other words, these two referees appear to be refereeing Uzbekistan matches more often than they should. One comment I heard many times from my last video was that the statistical arguments were stronger than anything else in the video. As such, I have decided to entirely forego video examples and make the statistical analysis more technical. Strap in. The best way to test the hypothesis that Uzbekistan's referees were not assigned randomly is to figure out what we expect if they had been assigned randomly and then see if we can falsify that hypothesis. This is the best approach from both a scientific and a moral perspective, assuming innocence, unless we have good reason to believe otherwise. There are a couple of different ways we can do this. One, based on variance, is outlined in this video. Another, based on a chi-square test, is linked in the description below. Both ultimately come to the same conclusion. So how will we go about testing the hypothesis that Uzbekistan's referees were not assigned randomly? It might be tempting to assume that random referee assignments would mean a country is assigned all referees in equal proportions. But that is not necessarily true. If we divide a country's bouts randomly amongst referees, we'd actually expect a single referee to referee far more than their fair share of matches. This is called a broken stick model, based on the idea of breaking a stick at random places. The stick would not be broken evenly, and some chunks would be bigger than others. These chunks represent the bouts officiated by a single referee. So under this model, how many fights would we expect a single referee to get assigned to a given country? There is a formula to figure it out, which is on screen for anyone who is interested. The answer is that, if there are 10 referees splitting bouts, the one who referees the most bouts for a certain country will referee 29%. The referee who referees the second most will referee 19%. And the referee who referees the third most will referee 14%. The referee who referees a country the 10th most will only referee that country 1% of the time. We can draw that out as a curve like this, which gives us an expected proportion of bouts different referees would officiate for each country. Note we are using 10 referees rather than 11 because many countries have a home country referee, so the total number of possible referees is only 10. We can then map the actual proportion from each country over this curve to see how similar the actual data are to our expectation. For example, the referee who officiated Kazakhstan the most officiated them 25% of the time, which is slightly below our expectation. The referee who officiated Kazakhstan the second most officiated them 21% of the time, which is slightly above our expectation. The referee who officiated Kazakhstan the third most officiated them 13% of the time, which is slightly below our expectations, and so on. Let's do that for all countries with more than 10 fights. Uzbekistan does look a bit different than the other countries, but it would be really good to have a single number to summarize the data for each country to simplify our comparison, like we did last time with the referee ratio. To summarize the data for each country, I used a statistic called the variance. Variance is exactly what it sounds like. How different are a group of numbers from each other? It works well to summarize our data because if one referee refereed all bouts for a certain country, the variance will be very high, while if the distribution is more even, variance will be low. Because the numbers will be somewhat arbitrary, I have divided the variance by the maximum possible variance to get a metric that runs between 0 and 1. I'll call this metric the variance of referee proportions, or VRP. To get a baseline, we can calculate VRP values at the extremes. If a certain country were assigned all referees equally, VRP would be 0. If the country were only assigned a single referee, VRP would be 1. If referees were assigned more or less randomly at our expected broken stick proportions, VRP with 10 referees would be a little under 0.08. In other words, higher VRP indicates that one or two referees refereed that country a lot, while a low VRP indicates that a country was refereed by a lot of different referees. To demonstrate how the VRP works, let's look at a few countries and the VRP for each. Kazakhstan's referee proportions curve is very similar to the expected curve, so we might expect VRP to be similar to that of the hypothetical expected curve we talked about earlier. As we can see, it is about 0.064. Korea has a relatively flat referee proportions curve, so we might expect the VRP to be lower. It is, at about 0.032. Iran has a steeper curve, so we expect the VRP to be higher. It is at about 0.11. But how high a VRP is so high that we should be suspicious? Let's look at all countries and see if there are any patterns or outliers. This graph shows the VRP for all countries that had at least 10 opportunities to get assigned different referees. The line running through the plot is the expected VRP under perfectly random assignments. As we saw before, there are differences in VRP between Iran, Korea and Kazakhstan, but those three countries seem to form part of the same distribution with all of the other countries. Differences between them are explainable as random noise in more or less random referees' assignments. That doesn't prove that they are random, of course, just that we can't say they are not with any confidence. But Uzbekistan is a clear outlier. Other countries have VRPs that are about 50% higher or lower than expected. But Uzbekistan's VRP at over 0.23 is very nearly 3 times higher than our expected value. This is strong evidence that we should reject the hypothesis that Uzbekistan's referees were assigned randomly. To put that in statistics jargon, Uzbekistan is about 6.5 standard deviations from the mean of the other countries, while those other countries are all less than 2 standard deviations out from the mean. Generally, we would expect only a tiny fraction of data to fall 6 standard deviations from the mean, and the probability of randomly drawing a number that different is only 7/10 trillionths of a percent, or p equals 7 times 10 to the negative 13. For those unfamiliar with statistics, a p-value of under 0.05 is considered significant. In other words, it is incredibly unlikely that these values would be obtained randomly. Given these numbers, we should, with some confidence, reject the hypothesis that the referees assigned to Uzbekistan were done so under the same process as referees were assigned to other countries, and can reasonably assume that something odd is going on here with referee assignment. If anyone knows who the person was who is responsible for referee assignment at this tournament, or has the official changelog for referees at this tournament, please let me know in an email. As this video comes to a close, I am going to make 3 requests. 1. Please continue sending me detailed interactions of inappropriate behavior to my email address, which I have included in the video information section again. 2. As CyrusofChaos has said in several comments on Reddit and YouTube regarding this situation recently, please film everything. The best way to protect yourself from things like this happening is to have a video record of everything. And lastly, I have included in the video information a link to the IOC Integrity and Compliance Hotline, where you can make a confidential and anonymous report detailing any sketchy situations you have observed. I encourage you to report anyone you feel is behaving inappropriately at this link. I was a bit scared to release the first video I made, but after the overwhelmingly positive response from the fencing community, I felt confident that I wanted to make another one. But they are hard to make, so even if there is a long lag between videos, just know that I haven't disappeared. This time my friend couldn't lend me her video editing services or her voice, but making this video really wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Hopefully you will see more short-form videos like this one more regularly.